I've been teaching for 4 years. I teach a combination of STEAM and science at this school at Jackson. STEAM is a new class at this school as of 3 years ago. We got feedback from the high school that they'd like more students coming into high school with more computer science and engineering kind of backgrounds through their electives versus just the fine arts like band and drama and art, which are all great electives. So through that feedback process, we decided to start a STEAM program here at our school, and this is its third year. And my personal background as a structural engineer. I was an engineer for 15 years before becoming a teacher. Initially, I was going to become a science teacher, and I still teach science. But when the STEAM opportunity opened up, I jumped on it. That's right up my alley, and it's been a good fit, I think. Oh, it's been a real trial and error. I mean, the first curriculum that we went through, I was really kind of, I don't want to say making it up as I went along, but I was grabbing and researching and talking to other teachers, many of whom hadn't taught a full STEAM elective. It was little bits and pieces of STEAM here and there in their science class or in their math class, to try to get some ideas of how I could string it all together for a semester-long elective class. So those early days, it was a lot of smaller projects, trying these things on, like coding, what coding platform worked well for students, what didn't, and then through that process, trying to mold the STEAM elective into something that was a little bit more coherent from the beginning of the semester to the end of the semester. I think overarching with STEAM, it's not the individual pieces of content that I'm teaching. How to use conditionals, or how to use variables in code, or even the skills of how do you best hot glue gun cardboard together. It's the problem solving pieces that, especially in middle school, of students being able to take a big project, a big problem, and be able to break that down into smaller pieces that they accomplish over time, and that can see that from beginning to an end. And maybe they hit a few bumps along the way, and they have to start over, or they have to remake something or recode something. But that process and allowing them to kind of go down that road themselves and just help a little bit along the way, I think is really where the learning comes in. Yeah, I think initially when I broke out the kits, I was pretty intimidated that the students were going to have some problems with how to connect it all together, what to do, where to put these things, freak out, oh my gosh. And I wanted to control that. I wanted to make sure that they weren't going to be turned off by all of this or overwhelmed by all of it. But in the end, I just decided to let it go. Here's the kits. We've got a day to kind of figure it out. You get to play around with them. I know you're smart enough, you're capable enough to figure this out. You can figure out a phone. You can figure these things out. And that actually worked pretty well. There was a lot of oh my gosh, what am I going to do? How am I going to work these? But that quickly calmed down to one person getting it hooked up to their Chromebook, a block paired with their Chromebook, and then everybody else seeing that. And then, through that just kind of organic process, students were off and running and really engaged. So I think that was nice, because I think that gave them a sense of control and feeling of confidence that they could do it. They didn't need me to kind of hand feed them directions on something that was pretty straightforward to use. I've seen a lot of unique uses, but the ones that I like to see, or I have seen the most that that stand out, or the students just find unique ways to use blocks in ways that I would never have imagined. So we're doing a project now where they're building their own game of chance, and the blocks can be used to light up or to spin wheels. And so now I'm starting to see students use them in ways that aren't ways that I would have ever envisioned. So in order to make sounds with the Sandlabs motor, for instance, when somebody wins, we have buzzers, but one student group really wanted to make more like a ringing sound when their game's won. So they took a motor, and now they're trying to figure out how to, as that rotates, ding, 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 a bell with a special little hammer that they're 3D printing. So they're working down that road, which is great. And I love to see just that kind of, they really want to make that part of their project, and the complications associated with that, I say go for it, and I like to see them, if that's what's motivating them, I want to see them continue and take that all the way down the road. Well, I've researched, part of my job is to research technologies that are available for STEAM, and there's a lot of them, so it's a little bit overwhelming at times. But the last few years I've been teaching kind of a computer science heavy STEAM curriculum to my 7th and 8th grade students. And most of that curriculum has been pretty static. It's on a screen, or it's happening out on an LED readout, or through maybe some breadboarding, but nothing that really moves. So when I was at a trade fair, an education summit trade fair here in Portland, Sandlabs had their booth out, and I was immediately drawn to the fact that these blocks were moving and lighting up and were very dynamic. And I really wanted to incorporate movement into the STEAM curriculum because I just thought that would boost student engagement and the different kinds of possibilities for projects. So doing some more research and testing, decided to go with the blocks as our next STEAM kind of investment. And it's been great so far. I think initially we just weren't finding a way to incorporate maybe some other subjects in a creative way. We're a very artistic school, and there's a lot of fine arts classes. We've got a lot of great teachers teaching our core classes, but just finding ways to incorporate those core educational goals, the goals in science and math, and even English language arts in terms of like using evidence to support your thinking. I don't think there's ever enough examples from a student's real world or interest that can get them to look at those same concepts in different ways, in ways that are engaging to them. So what I think STEAM has helped students do is, I'm bad at math, but yet they are required to use some math. They have to in order to do some building, to cut out the right size pieces for their robots or their games of chances. And through that process, they're using math in a different way, for example, and maybe realizing that their preconceived notions about it weren't what it actually is. So maybe math isn't as bad. Maybe writing directions down in a very clear way so another student user can figure out how the rules to their game isn't such a bad thing or such a hard thing to do if they're engaged in the project. So I think that's where STEAM is. You can find ways to engage students on their level and then sneak in the learning. So one of the challenges I was worried about from the get-go was just making sure that the blocks stay safe, and that if there's a problem with the block, whether that's a student stepping on it or the block just not working, I'm able to trace it back to the individual student group, so I can just ask them, what happened? Was this working for you yesterday? That sort of question. And so I kind of mulled around different solutions, but ended up putting together kits for the SAMS blocks and giving each SAMS block a specific number that's associated with the kit number. And then students check out a kit for the duration of the project. And that way, if there's ever a problem with any of the components in the kit, I know which student group was using it, and we can kind of sort out what happened. Absolutely. So one of the examples I have is for our current project, the Game of Chance. One of the requirements in the rubric is they have to write clear rules of how to play their game. And they have to get some feedback on those rules before they make them official part of their game. And it's really interesting to see the feedback they're getting, because they're starting to see that writing rules is really hard to do. And even if it makes sense to them, and the rules make sense to them, giving them to another person oftentimes yields results that are like, how come this is so complicated? Or it's not specific enough, it's very general. So students are kind of, I think in that way, they see the importance of writing, clear writing and technical writing skills, which I'm not sure they're getting a ton of at this level, but just it fits really well with the science writing that we do. And I think their social studies and English language arts writing, just to have to kind of think of the problem and give me step-by-step directions.